Hello, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Kristi Arzola, and every week on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Denver time, I release a new real-time video tutorial for watercolors. Today, I thought it would be fun to paint a spring bouquet. It's going to be a little bit more of a looser style, but it's just kind of a nice way to relax, be playful, and just enjoy different textures. These are the supplies that I'll be using today. You can find a list of these supplies in the video description. Today I'm going to be painting on Arches watercolor paper. Um, this is another good brand by Fabriano that I also enjoy working on from time to time, but Arches is my all-time favorite. And let's go ahead and get started. It never fails. Whenever I paint a floral vase, I happen to use all the colors. So you do not need this many colors, but it sure is fun. These are the ones I used: yellow ochre, lemon yellow, sap green, cerulean blue, ultramarine, purple lake, permanent rose, and alizarin crimson. Pause the video, refer to the list of colors in the video description if you feel it's necessary to match, but I really think just use the colors you have and have fun. For today's tutorial, there really is no line drawing. However, if you're uncomfortable with drawing symmetry for a vase, you can go to the video description and download a simple line drawing of a vase. The way you can do a transfer onto your watercolor paper is you can print out the line drawing of the vase at the scale you plan on painting it. On the back, just take a pencil, apply graphite, tape it in position on your watercolor paper where you'd like to have it, and then just trace with a ballpoint pen. With the pressure of your pen, it will actually push that graphite onto your watercolor paper so you're ready to go. For today's painting, I have decided to start with just a standard 5x7 scale, and then I went ahead and taped the edges. That's completely optional, but for me personally, I kind of like to set it up at a standard frame size just in case I really like it and I want to put it in a frame or gift it. So we're going to be using a variety of colors. For this particular piece, I've decided to make my vase blue. So I'm going to start off by using my number 6 round to bring some water over to my palette, and I'm going to mix up a couple variations of blue. So the first color I'm going to use is Cerulean Blue. And the second color I'm going to use is a little bit of Ultramarine. And I'm going to be adding a little bit of Purple Lake to that Ultramarine to give it more of a deep purple. I'm going to test out my colors on a scrap piece of paper. When I thoroughly dip my brush and dissolve the paint, I drag my brush across the rim of the palette and I just test out a small swatch to see if I like the color and if the color is the value that I want. If I want the color to be darker, I need to add more paint. If I want the color to be lighter, I add more water. So in this case, I would like my Cerulean Blue to be a little darker. So I'm going to add some more paint to my mixture and test that out again. Once I'm happy with my paint colors, I'm going to go ahead and begin with painting the vase. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of clean water. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, but I'm applying clean water just within the area of the vase. So I'm staying inside my pencil lines. I'm not going to worry about painting the inside portion of the vase because that's going to be mostly stems and florals. So I'll get to that later. Now, the purpose of the clean water is just to give you a little bit of working time so your paper doesn't dry as quickly. And it allows you to kind of get gradients and play with the blends of your paint on the paper surface before it dries. So it just extends your working time. So once I have water in my vase, I want to make sure there's no puddling. If there is, I'll soak up the puddles. Otherwise, I'm going to start off with my cerulean blue. I'm going to put this cerulean blue more towards the bottom, top, and throughout the center of the vase. Now, the reason I'm not bringing that color directly into the left edge is because I want there to be a light source hitting my vase from the left. So before I bring any color to that left edge, I want to actually rinse my brush, tap my sponge to remove the excess water, and I'm just kind of using my clean brush to drag and pull some of the color from the nearby areas of the vase, and I'm pulling them into that left edge. By doing that, I'm ensuring that the color will be softer and a little lighter. While things are still wet, if I want, I can come in and dab some color just to get a little bit more texture on the vase and interest. Now, I plan on having some soft cream colored florals, as well as maybe some salmon colors and some pinks. So I want to mimic some reflective color on the top of the vase. So I've mixed up a small amount of yellow ochre. I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to get a little bit of, I'm going to do purple lake. I only need a very small amount, so I dab my brush to remove any excess. And I just want to kind of imply maybe some reflective color on the top of the vase. And then while things are still damp, I'm going to finish adding my color to the rest of the vase. Now, I intentionally do not play any music in my videos because I figure if I was in my studio watching a tutorial, I would prefer to paint to my own preference of music. So feel free to turn on some music, get some snacks, and just enjoy the experience. So I'm coming in with that darker blue now. I want to kind of get some shading. And I'm intentionally kind of keeping this rendering a little on the rough side. And I'm not blending everything out, but I do want some of this darker blue to be along the base of my vase. And I know in some areas of my vase, the paint is already beginning to dry. So I need to kind of get out and just accept the vase for what it is at this time. So while that vase is drying, I'm going to go ahead and mix up some colors to use for the blossoms. So one of the colors I'm going to continue to use is the yellow ochre. However, yellow ochre is an opaque pigment, so I really want to water it down so I get a nice transparency to it. That way it doesn't feel too heavy. So just a really soft golden yellow. I'm also going to mix up maybe a little bit of a lemon yellow just to add some brightness. I am going to be using some purple lake. I'm going to be using some permanent rose pink as well. And I think to get a little bit of a salmon color, I'm going to add a little bit of this pink to my lemon yellow. That's a little too close to the yellow ochre, so I'm going to get a little more pink in there. And I feel happy with that. Okay, so I have 4 different colors to use for my blossoms. And as I get closer to the end of the painting, I'll just add more pigment to my mixtures for more vibrancy. But I'm going to start off with just a really soft yellow ochre. So I'm watering it down quite a bit. I want it to just kind of almost give the appearance of a white blossom with just a touch of those cream colors. So with these blossoms, I'm going to start near the vase without touching the vase because it may still be damp. And I'm not going for perfection here. I'm just trying to create interesting shapes and textures that will be kind of fun to look at. And I'm making sure that my textures are a little larger when they are closer to the vase. And then as they near the end of a blossom's branch, they're going to get a little smaller in size and be a little bit more delicate. But you can see that I've got a lot of negative space. I'm resisting the urge to fill it in. And I'm just kind of having fun with textures. So I'm just creating a really fun, unique shape there. Now that I have some of that yellow ochre in, I'm going to soak up any of the excess puddling because I'm going to introduce a second color to this blossom. But if I have too much moisture on my paper, when I introduce that second color, it'll just take over and go everywhere. So I want to kind of soak that up a little bit, and I'm going to give it a little bit of space so it can kind of absorb into the papers before the second color. Now I want a touch of this blossom color to be in a few other areas for just kind of color harmony. And again, I'm not putting pressure on myself to mimic anything exactly. I'm just focusing on shapes and negative space and just kind of having fun with the shapes I come up with. And I'm going to go ahead and have one larger blossom, more central, but I want this one to be of the salmon color. So it's a really watered down salmon color. I'm being very aware of my negative space. Try not to completely fill in everything. And I'm just trying to create some interesting shapes. And I'm trying to be okay with letting the outside edges of these blossoms be uneven and not symmetrical. I am, though, being consistent in the sense that the blossoms that are lower on the stem are going to be more mature, whereas the blossoms at the higher end of the stem are going to be smaller and less mature. Maybe I'll just have a couple other little blossoms here and there. So I'm trying to vary my shapes, avoid symmetry, and just get some really fun, interesting textures. Now, the first blossom I was working on has absorbed into the paper nicely, but it's still a bit damp, which is kind of the perfect stage for me to introduce a secondary color because there's going to be some blending and merging between the two. So I'm going to get some of that permanent rose I'm going to water it down a little bit so it's not too strong. And I'm going to tap my sponge or paper towel lightly with my brush so I'm not overloading my paintbrush. And rather than painting new shapes with this pink, I'm just tapping this brush with the color directly on the existing shapes that I created previously. And I'm letting the paint kind of blend so I get a nice combination of the two. And I'm going to do that on some of these other blossoms as well. I don't want to completely cover everything up, but just a little touch for interest. Now, while those colors are kind of drying a little more, I'm going to now go to my purple lake and I'm going to water this color down. I want just a really nice soft pastel. We can always go darker, but it's really hard to bring that brightness back if we go too dark right away in the beginning. So with this watered down purple lake, I'm going to create another blossom. If it runs into the others, it's okay. I'm just trying to be mindful of my negative space. So creating interesting shapes that vary in size and texture. And I want this blossom to be maybe a little larger. So I'm going to go a little higher than the other just to avoid everything being lined up perfectly. And while this purple lake is wet, I'm going to grab some of the permanent rose that is a little bit more on the vibrant side. And I'm going to tap in some of this color here and there. Now I want a little bit of that purple lake in a couple other areas. So I'm going to use that same purple lake and maybe I'm going to come up with just a little bit of a different textured flower. So rather than a large grouping, I'm going to do just smaller groupings to create a different texture. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. And I can put a stem in to kind of connect these little blossoms later. But right now I'm just trying to figure out where I kind of want things for fun. I'm going to add some of that same texture, maybe just a little small amount kind of peeking up behind this blossom here. If I have puddling and I want things to dry a little quicker, I can just take a dry brush and tap the top surface of any puddles, and my dry brush will just soak that up. I'm going to now go to my watered down permanent rose pink, and I'm just going to introduce some new color. This time I'm trying to think about just maybe smaller dots that are kind of in a cluster. And maybe it's a multiple branches. And I want to be okay with the flowers going right off the edge of my painting. That's what the tape's there for. But I'm trying to avoid making the outer edge of this blossom, symmetrical. And I keep doing it. I keep evening out the edges of my blossom unintentionally, just because that's what the brain wants. So I have to really be conscious and try to go back and make the outside edge a little more interesting because it's amazing what we naturally end up doing we don't even realize it. Now, while this pink is wet, I am going to introduce some of that salmon color. If some of the colors blend, I'm okay with it. I'm now going to mix up a little bit of green. So I'm going to be using sap green for this. And I will be adding some lemon yellow to make it a little more of a lime green. If I need a little bit more space to mix some additional color, I can just go to the center of my palette since I have colors everywhere. All right, so I'm going to start off with just a nice, soft, watered down lemon yellow. So it's not too intense. And I just want to kind of figure out where I might want some blossoms that are still, kind of in their bud form. So I'll be adding some green to this, but I just kind of need to figure out where I want them to start off with. And this is just layer one. So be patient and build your textures. And I think you'll be surprised with how fun this can be. And I want to kind of have some color balance. So if I have a touch of yellow on the left, I just want at least a little touch of yellow on the right. Doesn't have to be too heavy. Now I'm going to get some of that lime green. I'm just adding a touch of it to the yellow, and wherever it decides to mix, I'm just letting it happen. Just trying to not be too heavy-handed with it. Now, while these areas of lime green are drying, I'm going to start building the values in the other shapes that I've created. So again, I'm not going for realism necessarily. I'm just trying to create interest. Now, if my light source is coming from the left, then I want to kind of imagine, whatever kind of blossom this is, there's going to be a bit more shadow on the right-hand side. I'm just doing a series of little curved lines. I'm allowing those lighter values to still have a place. I'm not trying to cover them up. I'm just adding a little bit more. So with each overlapping layer, I'm trying to be less and less with my coverage. Now I'm going to get some more of that permanent rose to kind of push the colors in the areas of my purple flowers. And I'm going to even add some permanent rose to my purple just to darken it up a bit for more vibrancy. So now it's more of a mauve. Sometimes just even adding dots or little dashed marks without trying to make sense of it, because the human eye will kind of fill in the blanks. I'm going to get more of that permanent rose so I can continue to just kind of build my darks and create my layers. There I go, making everything even again, despite my efforts. Now, right now, everything is very bright and pastel. I need to really start pushing the depth. So I'm going to mix up a darker green by adding some of that ultramarine blue to my sap green so I can get a darker, more forest green color. If you have a hunter green, that will work out nicely as well. So what I want to do here is I just want to kind of come in to the center of my vase, and I think I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. You could tell I was hesitant there, not brushing or trusting my brush control today. And I just want to get a little bit of stems into my flowers. So I'm just kind of imagining where I have gaps in the blossom, where my stem might be going. And a lot of flowers have multiple stems for their blossoms, so you don't have to leave it to just one single central stem. If there are some nice little areas or gaps between your blossoms where it seems logical to put another little stem, then go for it. Now, these smaller clusters of purple, I think I'm going to use the dark blue I've made up for the vase that has a bit of purple in it, just to kind of pull in some of those blues. So maybe the stems on this blossom are darker. And I'm just being really light-handed. If everything doesn't completely connect, I'm okay with that. And I'm just bringing the stems down and then stopping before I hit the top of my vase. That way I have a place that I can kind of put the rim of my vase in later. I'm going to grab some lime green and add some stems in the center here, just being mindful of the blues that I just put in. I'm going to use some of this lime green to indicate some flower buds and stems through some of my other blossoms. And I can always come back and add some of the darker greens. But I like having a range of values. I think it helps a lot. Now, anytime green encounters wet pinks, it is going to create a little bit more brown. So just be mindful of that if you don't want a lot of browns. I'm going to return to my dark green and I'm going to add some darks to some of these green blossoms. I have no idea what kind of flowers these are, just making it up as I go. Being mindful of my light source on that left side. So if I'm going to put some darks, trying to at least keep them on the right. Adding some stems throughout the blossoms. So I'm continuing with that dark green just to add some darker colors to where the stems would be inside the vase. A lot of these stems would be in shadow because of all the flowers. So I'm not afraid to kind of push these darks a bit more. So any of that negative white space that I might have closer to the vase, I'm just taking time to kind of fill in some of that color. I'm going to use some of that dark blue with the purple. And in just a few select areas, I can add some dots to maybe imply the center of some flowers. Or I can maybe add a hint of a shadow at the base where this little imaginary bud connects with the stem. But it also just kind of pulls some of that color in from the vase. And I really like to kind of push my darks. Now I'm going to use some of that cerulean blue, but I want to water it down. And I'm just going to add a lighter rim to the top of the vase so I don't have a gap of white between my flowers. And I think I'm going to add maybe some oranges. I'm going to get some cadmium orange. Add it to my yellow ochre. And let's see, what's a new texture that I haven't done? So perhaps I'm going to have a stem kind of drooping from my vase, and maybe off that stem are some little branches. And I'm being okay to let my hand kind of shake and wobble so it's not even and perfect. And then maybe on this little branch, I can put just a series of little dots. So just try to imagine different textures that you can add just to kind of change things up a bit. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. And if I have that texture in one location of my vase, I tend to want to have it at least somewhere else. So maybe I have another little stem that comes out from the top here. Because I'm not looking to create a perfect vase of flowers. I just want there to be an explosion of different vibrant colors. Because flowers make me happy. All right, so I'm going to give just the flowers themselves some time to dry a little bit. So I'm going to create a little bit of color at the base so my vase doesn't look like it's floating in space. So I'm just coming in with some water. I'm going to bring that water right up to the bottom of my vase. And I can come up along the edges just a smidge. And I'm going to bring some of that water out towards the sides. And I'm kind of applying my water in a way where it's uneven. Now I'm going to use some of that watered down salmon color just to kind of imply maybe a tabletop of some sort. If I need it to be a little darker, I can get a little bit more color. And then the vase color itself will be reflecting in the tabletop surface. So I'm going to grab a little bit of that darker blue with the added purple. I have a little bit of my table color kind of creeping into my vase, so I want to soak that up a little bit. And then while this tabletop is still damp, I'm going to take a mildly damp brush and just kind of push and pull that shadow color around on that wet surface to kind of blend a little bit. I'm okay with uneven edges. I just wanted there to be at least a little bit more of a gradient. And my tabletop edge isn't really showing up too much. So if I need to come in and give a hint of a little bit more of a tabletop, I can do that too, just to bring better contrast. So right now, the orange dotted branch with the salmon colored floral are very similar in value. So I want to kind of break that up a little bit. So I'm going to grab, I think I'm going to go with maybe an alizarin crimson. Gotta love how I'm making it up. I added that to my salmon color just to make a little bit more of a darker value. And anytime I do a layer of an additional color, especially if the goal is to go darker, I'm just less and less with each layer so that all the layers kind of have the opportunity to shine through. And I'm trying to change up the shape of my brush strokes so it's not all the same. I don't want it to look like a pattern. And on the underside of the blossoms, more on the right side, I'm going to be a little bit more heavy-handed, so at least it might indicate some shadows in there. This one kinda looks like a rose here in the center. I don't hate that. Just trying to think of that light source coming from that left upper corner and trying to push my shadows a little bit on the opposite side. Now my pink blossoms on the far right need a little bit more help. I don't think I've really pushed my values for shadows yet. So I'm going to add more pigment to my mixture. I'm going to add a little bit of blue so I get kind of this pink purple. And again, just being heavier handed towards the bottom right so I can indicate a shadow. I'm going to check on the base, and it looks like the things down on the table are a little bit damp yet, so I can't mess with that. But I am going to take more of that dark green and try and add a little bit more greenery through the center here. So if I have little gaps between my blossoms, I'm just choosing to darken some of that up. And I'm especially going to darken up some of the greens that are beneath the florals. So it looks like a shadow. I just want it to pop forward a little bit more. And with this green, I think I'm going to create maybe some textures that are overlapping the vase. So maybe there are some leaves coming down and drooping. Maybe there are some leaves that are kind of hanging out. I'm going to switch up my colors to be a little bit more with the lime green for some leaves. Again, just trying to create a floral that is just kind of bursting with colors and textures. Once I kind of have some leaves to fill in some of the negative space, I can take my small branch or my small brush and add maybe some branches that connect to these leaves. If you just give yourself permission to play and try not to overthink it too much, I know that's easier said than done. This type of painting can be really relaxing. Just gets your mind off things. And before I consider this done, I'm just going to push the shadows beneath my vase a bit. Everything has dried since, so I'm just coming in with my small brush directly onto dry paper, trying to push that shadow. Once I have it in, I can rinse my brush, tap my sponge to remove the excess water and droplets, and I can use my brush to just kind of soften and blend that outside edge before it dries. But this helps just kind of push the contrast. And right now, I feel like the vase is possibly a little too clean looking. So maybe I just kind of come in with some cerulean blue in the side profile of my brush to just add a little bit of texture so it at least has a couple values. So I'm just kind of pushing that color to be slightly darker. Same with right around the neck of the vase. That would all be in shadow too. So I'm just kind of pushing the colors there a bit too. I'm going to get some of my purple lake on my number 6 round. And just for fun, I'm just going to add a little bit of splatters to the background. I can do the same thing maybe with a little bit of yellow if I'd like. But there you have it. Just a fun little spring floral. Just have fun, you guys. Give yourselves permission to paint. Don't give up on your paintings too soon. And each one's going to get better than the last. I hope you have a fantastic day.